Hello, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar Wednesday. My name is Sharon, and I'm with SIPA, your Colorado Government Authority, helping you get more information and services online. In today's webinar, we will learn about driving impact through effective data strategies from the team at Tyler, Colorado, and Tyler Technologies. Before we get started, please go ahead and turn on captioning if you need or desire, and note that during this webinar, you are muted. If you have a question or would like to communicate with the presenters at any point during the webinar, please use the chat box or the Q&A feature. We will unmute everyone at the end for any remaining questions. We'll also have some poll questions for you to answer during the presentation and a post-webinar survey, and we deeply appreciate your feedback. Please join me in welcoming our speakers from Tyler, Colorado and Tyler Technologies. We appreciate their time and look forward to what they have to share. Also on the call is SIPA's Sales and Marketing Director, Beth Justice, Customer Success Director, Dwayne Tucker, Sales Operations Manager, Heather Nelson, and Operations Assistant, Sarah Fisher, if you have any questions for us. Thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to the team at Tyler, Colorado.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sharon. I'm Drew Levenway. I'm the account director for our Tyler, Colorado team. And I know we've worked with many of you in the past. You might have known us in the past as NIC or even Colorado Interactive. But we are here today to talk about Tyler Technologies. We are a division of Tyler Technologies. We also work with a lot of other Tyler teams as well. And today I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing you to one of those teams, which is our Data and Insights team. They work across the country with a lot of our states, local governments, state agencies, and they are all about data. And today they're going to show you some really interesting use cases of how to harness your data and to create efficiencies within your own organization as well. So it's really nice to see everybody today, but I'm going to hand it over to our Data and Insights team. And as always, anything that you need from Tyler or Tyler, Colorado, please always don't hesitate to reach out to me as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christopher.
Thanks, Drew. Uh, Before we go to the next slide, I just really want to say that we're especially grateful to participate with this in this webinar today. It really is going to provide an opportunity for us to really reflect on our shared mission. So that said, Pat, if you want to head on over to the next slide. Some things that I thought were valuable to point out today when thinking about, I'll call it the digital transformation experience. And first thing I think is important when looking at parallels here are mission alignment. You know, when considering the mission and scope of SIPA, I mean, I'm really struck by the remarkable parallels with Tyler's own mission. You know, both organizations are dedicated to empowering government agencies to better serve their communities through the strategic use of technology and data. And our shared goal is to facilitate collaboration and efficiency, which ultimately enhances the delivery of essential services to citizens across Colorado. And at the heart of our collaboration really lies a commitment to leveraging technology to create unified platforms that offer seamless access to public services. And by modernizing and streamlining these processes, we really aim to make it easier for citizens to interact with their government, you know, whether it's accessing vital information or submitting necessary documents. But together, we reinforce a vision of a more connected and accessible government, one that really embraces innovation to meet the evolving needs of communities. Central to our partnership is the optimization of statewide portals, you know, providing comprehensive access to government information and services. And through our combined efforts, we really strive to enhance data transparency, enabling citizens to make informed decisions, which in turn fosters trust in government institutions. And by leveraging advanced technologies, we're really breaking down barriers to information and promoting greater accountability in public administration. When it comes to interagency collaboration, you know, collaboration is key to our success. As you know, we pool resources together, expertise and best practices to deliver effective and efficient services. And by sharing insights and working closely with agencies across Colorado, we're able to identify common challenges and develop tailored solutions that address the unique needs of each community. And together, we're building a network of support that empowers agencies to overcome obstacles and achieve their missions of serving the public. And finally, when it comes to access and ease of use, ultimately, our efforts are driven by a commitment to improving accessibility and usability of digital platforms. And by enhancing the user experience and implementing user-friendly interfaces, we're ensuring that all citizens, regardless of background or ability, can easily navigate and utilize digital services. Now, that I've covered I'll say overarching alignment of our missions. I'm going to pass it to Pat to delve a little bit deeper into the concrete steps that we've taken um, in our partnership with the state.
Awesome. Thanks, Christopher, and good morning, everyone. So I'm going to go to the next slide here, and I want to talk a little bit about our partnership, in particular with OIT, with the Governor's Office of Information Technology. We've had the pleasure of partnering with OIT as well as with SIPA in recent years on a variety of different needs and use cases. But I'd like to talk a little bit first about the OIT partnership. So we've had the pleasure of working together really since 2011, so more than a decade now. The numbers really speak for themselves as far as the breadth and depth of that collaboration. So if you go to SIM, the Colorado Information Marketplace at data.colorado.gov, you'll find a really easy to use, really robust, treasure trove of data, both in tabular format and in visual format, where different agencies have come together, more than 20 different agencies, and they've shared lots of different data assets, all for the good of collaboration between those agencies, as well as for the good of the public and being able to consume that data and be informed about what's going on around the state. So we're really proud and grateful for OIT's collaboration and the collaboration of many other agencies around the state, because the Colorado Information Marketplace has really been a standout example of a data portal on the national level. So we're really grateful for that partnership and can't wait to see where that can go next. So with all that in mind, I'd like to go on to the next slide here, and we can talk a little bit more about some additional use cases around the country. And for that, I'll hand it back over to Christopher.
Thanks, Pat. So I'm briefly going to cover a little bit about these 4 use cases, and then Pat will get a little bit more into the weeds on them. But so if we go clockwise, and I'm going to start with Texas. Texas Department of Information Resources, or Texas DIR, as most people refer to them as, it is a technology group within Texas that serves the entire state. There are 28.8 million residents in Texas, and there are 254 counties. And I'll refer to them as DIR. It plays a really pivotal role in advancing technology solutions for state government. And their partnership with Data Insights goes back several years, almost a decade. And they had the goal of establishing a data sharing ecosystem that involves not only state agencies, but also cities and counties, really to enhance collaboration and transparency and leveraging our data platform as the central hub for data sharing. And I'll just say a couple of numbers here real quick that I think were amazing when I read them. Was that, in looking at the platform and being able to have a centralized location, they were able to save over $5 million through the use of a centralized open data portal. But the cooler story, I think, is that they were able to utilize the platform in preventing fraudulent unemployment insurance claims, I think to the tune of like $90 million, by the ability for them to have a centralized, secure portal of sharing data with the Texas Workforce Commission, and being able to identify state of Texas prisoner inmates within the state of Texas that were filing for unemployment insurance. And so they were able to catch, through the data platform, over $90 million in fraud, which is just wild when I went through and read that. Going through the rest of the list, though, for Illinois AOIC, which is the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, they were looking for a way to create an efficient cloud-based reporting platform that really unifies data from diverse sources all across the entire state of Illinois. And the efforts really culminated with the passage of the state's Safety Act back in 2021, which included critical provisions around eliminating cash bail. And so they were looking for a way to take a lot of the localized data and looking for a way to feed that through a secure pipeline up to the state, in this case, the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, for their reporting and analysis. But the big piece here was that it really went after the initiatives that the governor had set in place. And so they're trying to find ways to take data and make best use of it, better use of it. For Kansas, similarly, as Illinois, Kansas was looking for a way to pipe local data up to the state for reporting and analysis. The difference here, this data was built around city and county property, commercial residential property valuation data. So they're taking this from the local level feeding it to the State Department of Revenue for reporting and analysis. And this platform has been up and running for, I think it's finally launched earlier at the end of last year. It's seen a lot of press on it, and they've had a lot of success in being able to bring this data together so far. The last use case that I'm going to mention is the state of New Jersey. And I'm a big fan of this one. Like, I'm a fan of all these use cases. I love what I do, but this one is really, really neat in its work that it's done around economic development. So we've worked through the state of New Jersey's Department of Community Affairs, and they use our platform for several reasons, but the one I'm going to highlight today is around economic development. So there is a nationwide program. It's called the Main Street Program. It focuses on the revitalization of downtown business districts in a given state. And so the state of New Jersey uses our platform to pipe in commercial economic data to look at supporting the revitalization efforts that they have by looking at metrics like mobility data or consumer spending data to help understand how the revitalization efforts are working throughout New Jersey. Similarly, in Colorado, there's also a Main Street program that's run through the Colorado Department of Local Affairs and their Division of Local Government. So this is just, again, I think it's one of my favorite use cases in that we're able to go in and help impact how states look at their economy and how they help grow their economy. That said, I want to pass it over to Pat. Pat's going to get some weeds a little bit on some of these use cases, but yeah, thank you all so much.
Thanks, Christopher. Yeah, so that being said, I'd like to drill in a little bit deeper on these big four use cases and really talk about how they can be applicable for Colorado. So coming to the first of these here is going to be a deeper dive into the Illinois courts use case. So Christopher described a little bit about the agency in play there and really how they're collaborating with localities. So really pivotal use case, again, with regard to cash bill reform that has been implemented in Illinois and getting metrics on data with respect to the court system in the state writ large, as well as in the localities and in the counties across Illinois. So just by the numbers, before we dive in too deep, Illinois is a very large state, 102 counties, including Cook County, which has over 5 million people, including the city of Chicago. And this has really been a solution that's helped give the administrative office of Illinois courts, again, at the state level, greater quantitative visibility into exactly what's happening at an aggregate level, as well as in terms of specific counties. So this is a little bit of a view into the dashboard, and we'll get into more detail on this shortly when we get into our on-screen demo. But you can see just right off the bat, this is going to be an interface that makes the consumption of data very easy. It doesn't require you to be a technical expert, doesn't require you to write any code, and you're going to be able to really understand the nature of the data right off the bat. I will say also, this is mock data right here. The data is very confidential in terms of their actual system, and we have protections in place to help support some very confidential data, including CGIS, HIPAA, and more. So again, just in terms of the overall value we've been able to deliver for Illinois, it's been quite remarkable. They have been able to help streamline processes that had previously been very manual in nature. They had previously had to send in reports from the counties to the state, which was quite burdensome, and it has really helped to make that data flow much more efficient, and it's helped folks really focus their time on more important tasks. So with all that being said, I would like to continue on and talk about the Kansas Department of Revenue example in a little bit more depth. So again, Christopher gave a great overview of this use case, and it's a quite similar flow at the end of the day in terms of that state and local collaboration, right? We're able to give, state agencies like the Kansas Department of Revenue or the administrative office in Illinois visibility into exactly what's happening in those counties. But one thing that's really interesting about the Kansas example here is that they have also been able to get additional calculations that they can do in terms of comparing the valuation of properties between counties. So taking a step back, one of the challenges that many counties in Kansas have faced for many years is that a lot of those counties are very rural. And because of that, they do not have a ton of properties, right? The quantity of buildings within those counties is often quite low. What that's meant in the past is that when it comes time to calculate the valuations, to do appraisals on those different buildings, those valuations are not very defensible. The county assessor's offices, particularly in rural counties, would go out, they would do the appraisal, but then oftentimes the owners of those properties, particularly when it comes to large businesses like McDonald's, Walmart, et cetera, that have presences in those counties, they've been able to challenge the valuations of those. And unfortunately, that's meant that they've often been lowered to values that are lower than what they should be. And that has meant revenue lost for those counties and revenue lost for the state. And it's just been a difficult set of events for them. So what this has meant is that no longer are they left to their own devices in terms of the property valuations just in one county out in western Kansas. Now they can actually do more intricate aggregation. They can get averages and medians, if you will, that are more meaningful, where those properties are actually compared apples to apples at the state level and between counties, and they can make those valuations more defensible. And that means more revenue for the counties and ultimately more ability to support other programs that are going on in the state. So this is a really impactful use case. We'll get into more detail on this shortly in the on-screen demo. But again, it's another illustration of state and local collaboration around data, where it's really made a big difference for the state as a whole. Moving right along, I would like to expand a little bit further on the New Jersey Connected Economic Development use case. So one thing that's really interesting about New Jersey is there's just the high level of income inequality. It's got some of the wealthiest communities in the nation, as well as some of the most struggling. And so because of that, it's really important to get a granular view of each community's economic status. And so this solution, our Connected Economic Development solution, has certainly helped provide that. And we've really found a great match in the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. So Christopher alluded to them earlier, I believe. And one of the things that they do is they support that Main Street program, and they support a few other programs as well across the state that are really meant to help support those localities who choose to opt into the program. They're given various support. They share best practices around how they can revitalize their downtown areas and those main streets, if you will. And it really comes down to getting data on how those communities are faring, right? They want to be able to see the full picture for the state, but because there's so many differences, so many disparities across New Jersey, it's really important to get that granular view. And we can see right off the bat what some of that looks like. You can see we've got some very easy to use choropleth maps that show different regions, and it can get quite granular. Right now we have counties right here, but you can also choose to toggle it and look at census tracts. So that can be the hyper local level. And you can really get, they're able to see the latest and greatest data from best in class sources and be able to see how things like consumer spending, business revenues, foreclosures, various real estate data, and much more can be brought in. So that's really the tip of the iceberg, and really see how those different metrics are trending and what additional support those communities may need. So this, perhaps more so than the previous two examples, is especially focused on that local data. Okay, with all that in mind, I would like to just kind of reiterate some of the common themes that we've seen across these three examples. I mentioned the state and local collaboration, but one thing that's really important to emphasize as part of that is what helps to make that possible, what supports that. So although I haven't shown it yet, we can dive into it in a moment. There are some really robust access control and security features that we have that can help to facilitate views that really span the macro level and the micro level. So particularly when it comes to Kansas, I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but because there are different agencies in play, including the Kansas Department of Revenue at the state level, as well as individual counties, we want to make sure that those counties are getting the data that they need, but they really only need to see the data for their own county, as well as the comparables for properties that they're trying to create valuations on within their county. And so their view is going to be a little bit more micro level, a little bit more constrained than that at the state level. When it comes up to the Department of Revenue at the state level, they, of course, are going to also have a broader view that's going to really allow them that oversight for the entire state. So we have some really robust access controls that make that possible. The second piece here is going to be with regard to data automation. And so this is another thing that really happens behind the scenes, but as hidden as it may be, it's really important in actually making the system easy to use and allowing that data to be as actionable as possible. So we have some really robust data pipelines that are able to connect up to a variety of different sources. And with that, we can ensure that the data in the system is always going to be current and accurate. This is infrastructure that's actually in use right now in Colorado. We've been working together with OIT and with SIPA on actually putting that into practice, using our pipelines, using our gateway system. And with all that infrastructure, we're able to help ensure that when folks come into the system, they're seeing the latest and greatest data that they can trust. So it has a real impact for the end user. And then last but not least is in terms of the dashboards themselves. And we'll get into that shortly. But when it comes to the three examples that I just walked through from Illinois, Kansas, and New Jersey, we had some dashboards, and they're certainly in place right now, where the metrics are going to be really meaningful, really relevant to their needs and things that they can act upon as they make decisions for their communities. So just wanted to emphasize some of those points there. I see some responses coming in, so appreciate everybody's input on the polls here. And we can absolutely talk about some of these items kind of as we get closer to the end, as folks have questions. So do want to be cognizant of that as well. With all that in mind, I would like to jump over to a quick demo because there is one more example that I want to walk through. So Christopher had alluded earlier to the use case we've got with the Texas Department of Information Resources. And just a quick note on that, the Texas DIR has done a lot of work in facilitating collaboration with various agencies around that state, kind of going back to that diagram that we showed earlier. And one of the use cases, one of many use cases that they have is around motor vehicle registration, and particularly around temporary tags. So one of the issues that we've seen around the country in recent years is that, a lot of temporary tags are not being expired, and they're not being converted into permanent license plates, right? Folks are not getting the actual plates, and there are also some situations, unfortunately, of fraud surrounding temporary tags. So being able to get additional visibility into the data on temporary tags is really important. And so this may be something that resonates in Colorado as well with regard to the Department of Motor Vehicles, but I'd like to walk through a sample of what that could look like. So give me 1 second, if I could. I'm going to actually stop sharing the PowerPoint, and we're going to flip over here briefly to an on-screen demo. So before I do that, I would like to pull up the story page, which is our reporting interface. And with all that in mind, let me make sure I've got the right window. Okay, here it is. All right, so this could go a lot of different ways, but when it comes to temporary tags, you're going to want to really be able to see this data in a secure interface and be able to interact with it in such a way that the data you're looking at is always going to be current and accurate. And this can really help serve the needs of a lot of different stakeholders. So you might imagine in terms of law enforcement folks, if they're pulling someone over on the side of the road, they need to make sure that the temporary tag of that person's vehicle is active and not expired, right? And it can really help do two things. From a law enforcement standpoint, it can help keep those officers safe in terms of making sure that, if they're pulling someone over, that it's actually expired, right? So if that's the reason they're pulling someone over, that they're actually needing to do that. And then furthermore, from an equity perspective, making sure that that folks are actually, justly being pulled over, that those vehicles actually do have expired tags. So it could go both ways. But with all that in mind, we have an interface here where it's very easy to choose, the tag number. You can use these drop downs and basically filter the data and do searches as you see fit. I have put together some mock data here for some different Colorado dealerships that may be recognizable, but this is mock data, so I will say that right off the bat. And what we're going to have the ability to do here is see information that pertains to a few different relevant aspects of data. When it comes to the vehicle tags, we have that on the left here. So being able to see some information about some of these sample tags, being able to see information about the dealerships where those were issued, that can be important because, you know, I don't think we've seen it in Colorado necessarily, but you know, just a theme that's happened around the country is dealerships and resellers, you know, who are selling vehicles are sometimes issuing those temporary tags in an illegitimate manner. And so that's something where if there are patterns in the data where certain dealerships are at fault, then that could be analyzed with this. Being able to see information about the types of vehicles, you know, and the VIN numbers on them. This is just mock data here, so these are just made up names, but you could imagine being able to track information about the drivers as well, if needed at an individual level. So this is something that could, you know, go in a lot of different directions. We could certainly have additional data elements on here if needed, but this is the tip of the iceberg for what's possible when it comes to this use case around temporary tags. Coming down a little bit further, we do have the ability to just, you know, see the statuses of these. That you can see how many are active or expired, for instance. And having some different charts could be helpful here as well, being able to kind of prioritize the enforcement and the follow-up around some of these temporary tags by, you know, how long they've been expired. So you could bucket this out into whether they've just recently expired. Maybe that's not a big deal, but if it's been expired for, you know, 6 months or a year, so on and so forth, those might merit additional follow-up. Coming down a little further, again, I've just chosen a handful of dealerships around Colorado, but you could see some around the Front Range, and then some, I think this is in Glenwood Springs. So you could have additional types of visualizations on here if you so desired, but this is one area in which this could be made available to various stakeholders. And one thing you're going to notice here is this is designated as private, and this is really important. So I talked about some of the robust access controls that we have within our system, and we make that very easy to configure. So if we come up here to to this little menu, we're going to have the ability to set up different viewers, different audiences, and those could include individual users, but they could also include teams of users. And teams, as you can see right here, can be really helpful when it comes to various agencies, right? So if there are folks within the Department of Motor Vehicles, for instance, who you want to grant access to, you could certainly designate those right here, and it would be very easy to share that with them. But you can have confidence that this data is not going to be made public, right? Because it is, you know, confidential in nature, at least conceptually. So with all that in mind, I would like to say that we do have some examples on screen here of some of the other use cases that we had talked through earlier from around the country, including Illinois, Kansas, and New Jersey. So I would like to kind of just at a very preliminary level show you a little bit of what this looks like. Again, for Illinois, this is mock data. Again, the real data is very sensitive, so we would never show that. We don't have access to really be diving into that anyway. But we can see right here the concept where we have some different metrics. I mentioned that our metrics are really curated to be relevant and actionable for those stakeholders. And it's all going to be surfaced in a really well-organized visual dashboard like this. We also talked a little bit about Kansas, and with Kansas, they actually do have a public-facing portal right now. And I can put this in the chat if folks are interested, but this is something that was launched quite recently. And I think we're really proud of what's been done there, and we're grateful for the collaboration of the Kansas Department of Revenue. They've made some of this data available for the public so that they can really get additional visibility into the property valuations around the state and in their communities at both a residential and a commercial level. And then furthermore, we did talk a little bit earlier about the New Jersey Connected Economic Development use case. Again, Colorado's also got a Main Street program. This is a use case we would love to discuss further. But this is something where across these 4 different programs, including the Main Street program, the Department of Community Affairs has really done a great job of taking a data-driven approach together with our tools and helping to support the various communities around that state and helping them, you know, increase their performance on these metrics. And that has real benefits for small businesses and for folks in those communities across New Jersey. So use case we're really excited about. With all that in mind, that kind of brings me to the end of our presentation here. I would like to turn things back over to Christopher, Drew, and Kellen and team if there's anything else that they wanted to add. But we'd love to talk further about some of these use cases. We believe that there's a lot of applicability in other states, including in Colorado, and we'd love to see if there's any interest in any of these use cases we discussed, or conceptually similar use cases that do involve that state and local collaboration or cross-agency collaboration. And would love to keep the conversation going. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Pat. Just one thing. So there's a question right now that's out there that said, what platform was the dashboard built in? It looks great. So first off, to the attendee that asked the question, thank you very much. The platform, it's built on our platform. I don't know if Pat wants to elaborate on that or can elaborate on that a little bit, but the dashboards that you were looking at were all built on Tyler Data and Insights.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Christopher. And one of the things that's notable about that is the Tyler Data Insights platform is what's in use in a couple different Colorado use cases already with regard to SIPA and with regard to OIT. Now, that being said, we do have a few different modules that we can kind of use to expand upon that. And those modules have been in use in the 3 states that we mentioned, Illinois, Kansas, and New Jersey. But yeah, ultimately the platform at the end of the day is what helps to support that.
Something else that I'll call out, and the word's been said several times throughout the webinar so far, it's ease. Ease of use more specifically. And that's one thing that's really special about what we have done. So in the 17 years almost that previously Socrata, now Data and Insights, has been in existence, our focus has been on making data useful, discoverable, and actionable on an easy to use, easy to navigate platform where everybody can participate, whether you're an agency executive, whether you're a frontline manager, or whether you are a frontline government knowledge worker. It's built so that everybody can contribute. You don't have to be overly technical. You could be a business user, but at the end of the day, this is meant to serve as a tool that everybody can play with and garner insights and contribute to whatever your department or your agency's mission critical outcome may be. Just wanted to say that. But if there are any additional questions out there, happy to field them. Just glad to be here with you all today.
Feel free to unmute or raise your hand if you want to ask verbally, or you can throw it in the chat or Q&A, either way.
And I'll just kind of jump in here really quick too. We see this a lot across our different states. Tyler Technologies, we're now in, 29 or 30 or so states. But lots of different government entities have different data needs. So don't feel like you have to have, some big, great data proposal or plan. Sometimes it's something really small too that just, helps create efficiencies in your own organization. I think data as a word can sometimes be overwhelming for folks too, right? And I think that's a really good talking point of our data and insights team is they are here to help talk y'all through some of those challenges, right? You might be new to your position in your organization. You might be a long-standing position in your organization with lots of siloed data and lots of different places, or maybe you're coming from an old school mainframe system. And you don't know, what to do with the data or maybe even how to access it in a meaningful way. So we have folks that are able to help talk through some of those challenges and talk through some of those needs. So don't think that you have to come with like a fully fleshed out request or ask or data plan. We can actually help talk through the intricacies of a lot of those things because we see them across the country, right? We see them across whether it's Mississippi or Alabama or Oklahoma or all these different states that we have partnerships with from state government and local government perspective too. So don't ever hesitate to reach out, and I'll give some time here for questions. But I did want to let y'all know that as we talk to more and more folks across the country, sometimes you just have to start with that first kind of conversation of, where is my data? How can I access it? And then what am I trying to do with it too? So I
Yep.
just wanted to put that out there. But
Thanks,
love to hear
Drew.
any questions too.
I'm happy to pose a question in the group and just to see where everybody's at with this. And it's questions really around data governance on our agencies or that with the attendees that are on today within your department or your agency. Are there data governance challenges that your organization are thinking about as data needs evolve over the next 1, 2, 3 years?
Definitely for us, it's security.
Okay. Sharon, when you think about that and you think about security, what else comes to mind specifically to security, or anything else pops in?
Being able to make it easy to share with people who it needs to be shared with, but at the same time keeping it secure, because you need to have that team dynamic and in those interactions and discuss things back and forth, but obviously not in a way that compromises that.
Yep. Pat, do you know of a data platform that you can share data securely?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks for the question. And the background there, Sharon. I think that our enterprise data platform, as well as the different modules that we've shown here today, are really proficient at that, and it really comes down to, I think you articulate it really well, is finding that balance between sharing, but also making sure that it's shared with exactly the right audience. And our goal is to do that where the data is shared with exactly the right audience, no more, no fewer folks, in a way that is current and accurate. So they're going to be seeing that latest and greatest data. One of the mechanisms that we have for doing that, beyond the data, automation piece, from more of a security standpoint, is with regard to that little screen that I showed briefly earlier that showed 3 buckets, right? Private, internal, and public. And when it comes to that, we have the ability to go more granular than just those 3 levels, right? So we can have data shared to specific users. We can have it shared to specific teams. But one thing that's really important is we do also have an approval process that folks can use, where if you do intend to share data with the public, it can be gated so that there's a workflow. An administrator has to say, yes, we're okay with this being made public before it actually is made public. So there is some gating there. And one thing we've recently introduced as well is the ability to have that gating also apply if you choose that middle bucket, which is the internal bucket, right, between private and public. And that's important because we've found, I think this is true in Colorado, is the state government can be quite large, or an individual agency can be quite large. There can be a lot of personnel within them. And so even though those users may all be registered users on our platform, for instance, you don't necessarily want to share one given data set, particularly if it's highly confidential, with everybody across the entire enterprise. And so that's something where we have an additional gate in place to make sure, do you really want to share that with everyone? We can absolutely make sure that that gets additional eyes on it before that happens.
Excellent.
Thanks, Pat. Mm-hmm. Pat, there's a question in the chat. Maybe you can field this one. Does your platform replicate data to a centralized location?
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. Thanks, Jason, for that question. So we do. Ultimately, our platform is meant to deal with copies of data, and the reasons for that are, I think, multifold. Part of it is that we don't want to make you all go through, a complex migration when it comes to using our tooling. So if we were to, insist on not replicating the data and really just taking it and being the end all be all place where that data lives, that would require you to, migrate that data to our platform and really, decommission those systems that you might be more familiar with. Instead, what we aim to do is we aim to really be that meeting place, that hub for data, where it's very easy to come in and you always have data you can trust, that is reliable, but ultimately still allow you to go back to those systems that may be broken out by department, or that may be SaaS systems, databases, even other Tyler products, for instance, and still interact with the data there, make changes you need to there, but that will still ultimately flow to the centralized hub where everybody can consume it. And this ultimately means that we're bringing new folks into using data who might not have before, right? There are folks who might not have that technical aptitude, and that's okay. But in the past, that lack of technical aptitude might have meant that those barriers to using data at all were too high. They wouldn't be using data at all. So we believe that by bringing it into a hub where it's easy to use, they're going to be able to use data oftentimes for the first time, and that will create additional insights, additional value for them. So,
thanks, Pat, and great question, Jason. And Pat, since you actually mentioned the word barrier, this was already in my mind as something that I was curious from the group is. When it comes to barriers, like what are some of the main barriers that are hindering your department or agency to fulfill its data needs? Is it resources, quality, legacy systems, systems talking to each other? Just throwing out a couple suggestions there, but we'd love to hear if that's something that the group's thinking about.
Oh, another good question in the chat.
What's this one? Pat, think about that one. I'll at least respond to my own question too, and that's just the one thing. The three things that we have seen over our time is as barriers are that in a lot of cases data resides in silos, whether that's in systems within a department or agency, whether that's across departments or agencies, across jurisdictions. Sometimes it's just a challenge to bring it together. It could be legacy systems, as I mentioned, older technologies, again, going into the first problem of being able to talk to other systems. And then the third piece is one that we have spent a lot of time on. Not that we don't spend time on the first two, because we've kind of covered that we do, and that's a data literacy skill. So we're here to help bridge that gap between the technical user and the business user, and having that one location where everybody can come play ball. But that's what we're thinking about. So if other things pop up as barriers, please put them in the chat. Speak up. We're glad to talk through those with you all. But Pat, any thoughts on Mike's question?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So I think in terms of project portfolio management, I think that there may be some additional. That may be something we can take offline or continue to talk about. I think that may be something that the Tyler, Colorado team has a good bit of experience with, particularly when it comes to some of the great work that they've done with respect to SIPA and some of the initiatives within SIPA recently. So that may be something we can continue to expand on. But if anybody from the Tyler, Colorado team wants to chime in on that, they can. Otherwise, Mike, maybe if I could, maybe I'd ask if you could elaborate a little bit on that question, please. I think it's a good question, but want to make sure we're on the same page. And you can either put that back in the chat, or if you want to unmute, welcome to do so. I'm not sure if it might be just text only, but. Okay, thanks. And Gina, great question. Have you built platforms that allow for user input and data reporting? So yeah, within the Tyler portfolio, we have a lot of other products that oftentimes are sort of line of business systems, as we like to call them. Those often do cross into ERP systems, permitting and licensing systems, tax and appraisal systems, and much more. Those, I think, are certainly examples of where you would input the data, and we have integrations with many of those systems within the Tyler portfolio, and we're able to bring that data in an automated manner for reporting. So that's something that's been a large point of emphasis for us in recent years.
Pat, at the risk of us repeating ourselves, for Colorado, we're all with Colorado. When it comes to Kansas, I'll just reiterate that when we were talking about the project of being able to take the local data up to the state for reporting and analysis, those systems, for the most part, were Tyler systems at the local level. So those integrations had been built in and being able to funnel that data up. So that's one of the huge benefits of how easy it is for Tyler customers or Tyler products to be built in. A lot of those integrations that Pat had mentioned are in place today, and it makes it super easy for us to connect to those systems and see as close to an immediate time to value as possible. So yeah, happy to talk more about that though.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything they'd like to ask? A little bit of a quiet group today, but we've had some great questions. All right. Well, it looks like
there was another question, I think.
Oh, is there one more?
Yep. How do you ensure data quality?
Yeah, great question. Christopher, do you want to take that?
No, please. I'll let you take a first swing at it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So in terms of data quality, we go through a really robust implementation cycle, and we have a very skilled professional services team that we bring in as part of every implementation. And as part of that, they do a few things. Like one of them, I think Christopher alluded to earlier, is around data governance. And so as part of that, we do like to kind of take inventory of exactly what data elements are going to be brought in. And as part of that, we look at not only, the concept of, what schemas, what columns are going to be brought in, what tables at a high level, but also looking at the contents of it, right? And oftentimes we do, work with subject matter experts on the client side to actually kind of talk through, do we understand exactly what this data is showing? Is it showing what's intended? Because ultimately, we want to make these reports really easy to use. We talked through some of those visual examples from other states and in Colorado. And as part of that, we need to make sure that the data feeding into those is going to be valid and high quality. So, we have some processes in place. We have some technology to actually do a little bit of that in an automated manner. A lot of it does happen kind of with human eyes on it as well. But it is a combination of the two in our experience. So great question.
Yeah, I'll just add to that the big pieces during any project's scope of work creation. We work with the agency or department's team, making sure that everybody's on the same page of what the project is, where all the data is coming from. And then once we can determine where the data is coming from, we work on a standardization approach on making sure the data comes in, it's cleaned, it's ready to go, and true to minimize any quality errors.
Great question.
And just in response to Kristen, thanks for asking. It's exciting that you're hoping that it's recorded. If there are any questions that we can help answer after the fact, something pops up for anybody for that matter, please feel free to reach out to the SIPA team. Happy to get us in contact with you all and help support y'all in any way we can.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it. Yes, as Christopher said, please don't hesitate to contact any of us with any follow-up questions, or if you want to get on a call to learn more, get a quote, go to sipa.colorado.gov to register for our future webinars that we have coming up. March 13th, CapTech's going to be talking about accessibility as business as usual, how to meet and exceed accessibility guidelines. April 24th, Optiv is going to be discussing cybersecurity. And on May 8th, Evitech is going to be going over AI road mapping, the opportunities and risks of using generative AI. To find other services that we can help you procure, we've got a whole list of our service suppliers on our website as well. You can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter and get lots of great information and news and updates as we put that out. If you want to return to this webinar, as mentioned in the chat, we will be getting it up on our YouTube channel. So we'll get that out as soon as we can. And we've got that post-webinar survey coming out here shortly. So we really appreciate if you could answer those questions and help us plan future webinars. Thank you again so much. We wish you all a wonderful day.